35 members of the House of Representatives have proposed a bill for an act demanding constitutional alteration to provide for the rotation of executive powers among the 6 geopolitical zones. This, according to them, is to ensure equal representation and reduce the desperation and tempo of agitation for the creation of states.
The bill seeks, among other things, the creation of the office of 2 vice presidents from the southern and northern parts of Nigeria. The first vice will be a succession vice president, while the second vice president will be a minister in charge of the economy, and both will be ministers. Now, joining us to discuss this is legal practitioner and public affairs analyst Chukwum Eze Diaro. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, thank you, Osarodin. Thank you, Olive. And I'm glad to be here.
All right, let's probably just get your first thoughts, on this. I don't think any Nigerian was expecting to have these type of conversations when the year started. But now we're talking about, 6-year term. We're talking about rotational presidency. We're talking about 2 vice presidents. It's quite a lot.
Yes, it is. So interestingly, this is not the first time this particular bit about a single tenure for the office of president and governor has been raised. It's been introduced 4 previous times, and each time it failed. This is the 5th time. Maybe 5th time is a lucky time. Now, looking at it, right, it's interesting that the people who are pushing this bill are members of one of the opposition parties, the People's Democratic Party.
Yes.
Now, there were about 35 of them at the press conference. Now, to get this through, this requires a constitutional amendment, because in the Constitution, somewhere between sections 140 and 145, it's clearly stated that the tenure of the office of president is 4 years, and then you can go again, you can represent yourself again for a second term, and you cannot do more than 2 terms, yeah. Meaning that you must, once you've been elected to the office of president, at any 2 elections, you have legally stopped from presenting yourself again for that office. Now, to get a constitutional alteration done, you need 2/3 of the House of Representatives to agree. You need 2/3 of the members in the Senate to agree. Then you need 2/3 of the Houses of Assembly in Nigeria to agree. We have 36 state houses of assembly, so 2/3 of that will be 24 state houses of assembly at the minimum agreeing to it. Now, in the Senate, 2/3 of 109 senators gives you about 72 senators. The APC currently, unless I'm mistaken, has about 61 senators. So they will need help from another party.
Yeah.
Is this doable? On paper, it is. Practically, we'll see. And constitutional alteration processes are not very fast. They take a period of time. We could probably be looking at this for the next 12 months or 24 months or even 36 months, because you cannot hurry the state houses of assembly to get in their votes. Remember that sometime last year there was an alteration, and we were receiving reports that some state houses of assembly had taken their votes, some hadn't, and they had to wait the process. So very interesting times lie ahead, and we'll see what comes out of it.
Do you think that this is any different? I mean, like you've mentioned, this has happened over and over again. It's not a new thing. Ohanaeze Ndigbo have advocated for this, and I was talking about even at the 9th Assembly, they had debated extensively on this. In fact, at some point, I think they were arguing for 5 vice presidents. So it has taken different forms over the years. And you've said that we're not quite sure, but from where you stand, do you see it being a reality in this current House?
It's hard to read this current National Assembly, because many times they do not follow established logic in arriving at their decisions. So yes, it's possible, and why I say it's possible, if the president then decides that this is the way the country should go forward, they will fall in line. Yeah. But to suggest that they have a very independent thought process separate from that of the president will be stretching the truth.
Okay.
Now, I'm sorry, very quickly. Now, this current iteration says 2 vice presidents. We have continually been harping on the fact that we need to reduce or cut down on the cost of governance. How does having 2 vice presidents make
Probably
any sense?
Need another vice
because
president's
just
residence.
On Friday last week,
yeah.
the official residence of the vice president was inaugurated, yes, the official cost is about 21 billion, right? Now, assuming we were to get this on course, the second vice president would need a residence.
Yes.
He would then need a full complement of officials. He would need a full complement of official vehicles. When will the political class align with the aspirations and intentions of the common Nigerian man and woman that the cost of governance has to be reduced? And this is not the way to go about it.
I mean, part of the argument for the reduction of cost of governance would be, as you know, part of the recommendations would be that they want all the elections to happen on the same day. I don't know the possibility of that because we haven't successfully been able to even carry out elections that are free, fair, credible. And they also want that, you know, we'll come to talk about the rotation of the executive, but they also want that issues regarding the dispute, election dispute be sorted out before people are sworn into office. Do you see that happening?
It's going to be difficult. So let me start with the election dispute determination. Now, they're proposing 6 months. I'm a legal practitioner. Now, according to the current electoral law, in every polling unit where you allege there was some breach of the electoral laws, you must produce a witness who will speak to the breach. Now, in certain local governments, you could have 2,000, 3,000 polling units. Now, when you talk about the Federation, there are 774 local governments recognized in the Constitution. Let's even do an average of 500 polling units per local government. You then have an idea. And if you allege that there were widespread breaches in, say, 100,000 polling units, you are required to produce 100,000 witnesses. Now, the entire period is 6 months under law for determining election disputes. When are you going to start hearing?
And each witness is going to be cross-examined.
Correct. And you will find that from previous election tribunals, you are given 10, 15 days to present your case.
Yeah.
In 10, 15 days, even with cross-examination, you'll be lucky to call 10 to 15 witnesses. And for every polling unit where you do not produce a witness, it is deemed you've abandoned the allegation or the pleading. And judgment cannot be given for you in respect of that polling unit. So beyond all of this, I'm surprised they didn't really harp on the fact that we need to amend our electoral law. We need to remove the burden of proof from the person who is, from the candidate, and push it to the umpire. So first, the umpire has to convince the court that, look, we conducted it in accordance with the Electoral Act. Then the petitioner will then come forward and say, okay, even though the Electoral Commission has said it did, here are my reasons why I say it did not happen. And then the tribunal will then be able to make an informed decision.
Yeah. All right. I want you to also speak on, I lost my train of thought for a second. There's people who say that, I mean, the political aspects of this now, where people say, oh, this is, you know, President Tinubu's way of trying to give himself an extra 6 years in office and all of that. Those are things that would definitely also creep into the conversation and maybe derail the possibilities of these things happening, or maybe, you know, push it, you know, even further or put forward. That's one, and then, you know, just speak on that first, you know, and then I'll get you to the second one.
Okay, so like I said, constitutional alteration procedures take a period of time. So it's not certain whether we will get this done within the next 8 months, the next 12 months, the next 2 years. Now, if this is done before the first term ends, that is a very legitimate question. Is he eligible to present himself as a candidate, the first candidate to try the 6-year tenure? Now, there will be schools of thought. One school of thought will say, even under the old arrangement, the maximum you could do was 8 years. Now, if you do 4 years, then you then present yourself, and this is a big if.
That's 10 years.
That's 10 years.
Yeah, but I mean, doesn't it dissolve the old arrangement?
Yes, legally, if they're able to get it done, yes. But the spirit of the Constitution was that you do 8 years. Nobody has a monopoly of wisdom or experience. You do your bit, you leave, and someone else comes to continue from where you stopped. Remember, we copied this from the United States of America, and it's 8 years. Now, if he does present himself, it will be very interesting what the courts will then make of it, because I'm very sure it will be presented to the court for a judicial interpretation and a decision on the issue. So, like I said, it's hard to tell. Now, should he present himself? That is another question. His supporters would say yes, that he should be allowed more time to continue or complete the good work he has started. His opponents will say no, it's
been a disaster.
Right.
No, they may not say it's, well, they may say that, but they may just say, look, you are meant to do a maximum of 8 years.
Yeah.
Since you've now set this up, you should not morally be the first recipient.
Right.
Yeah, so there's also that.
Let's talk about this rotation of the executive powers, which is a very key part of this conversation, because some would argue that the position that we have right now doesn't, in the interest of equity, doesn't give everyone a fair chance. So is there some element of fairness to their argument that the executive powers be rotated across the 6 geopolitical zones?
There is some logic to what they're saying. However, as a nation, I'm personally of the opinion that we should move beyond these sort of issues.
Yep.
At any point in time, we should be putting our best foot forward, not presenting candidates merely because they come from a particular location. Now, interestingly, I want to see how this will fly in the face of Section 42 of the Constitution, which says every Nigerian has a right not to be discriminated against. So, for example, you say it's a turn of the Southwest or the Northeast to present a candidate, but to the whole nation, the best candidate is either from the Southwest, from the Northwest, or even from the Southeast. What then happens?
So does this then invalidate the zoning arrangement in a number of political parties?
Now, those zoning arrangements in political parties are not legally binding. They're just agreements between members of an organization. And you'll find that even when they say they're zoning, some candidates come out and say like they're not a part of that arrangement, and they present themselves.
Yeah.
Now, yes, the present system is not efficient, it's not tidy, it could be a lot better, but we cannot continue to pick candidates merely based on issues other than merit, competence, and ability.
All right, so I just want, your thoughts, if you were, because, I've seen arguments that these aren't the constitutional adjustments that we should be talking about in Nigeria today. So if you were, to put out one thing, that let's just change the constitution here or there, what things would you suggest that they should be discussing today instead of, a 6-year tenure for the president?
Okay, so thank you. So one of the things I'll be advocating for is the autonomy of local governments should be inserted into the constitution.
Well, which is also one of the things that they are advocating for.
Yes, it should be inserted there, and they should have a separate account so that when money is being distributed from the federation accounts, it goes straight to them without the input or interference of the governors. 2, I'll be advocating that the immunity of the governors be removed. Because in the system we copied from the United States of America, governors don't have immunity.
Yeah.
They can be dismissed, they can stand criminal trial, and they can go to jail.
Wouldn't there, the argument in support of that usually would be that we would then see an abuse of court processes and an influx of cases, frivolous cases.
So the courts in Nigeria are duly competent to determine abuse of court processes, and they have the powers to deal appropriately with such issues when they arise. So for me, because trace our journey from 1999 to date, a lot of the governors have acted in impunity. There's no incentive for them to do any serious work. And at the end, people spend 4 years, 8 years, and you can't really pinpoint what they've added to the development of their respective states.
Right. This is an ongoing conversation, and as we get more developments, we'd love to have you again. Chukwum Ezediaro, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.